IncredibleBank. So why don't you introduce yourself to me and everyone out there?
Sure. So thank you first of all for coming, Christina. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. My name is JoAnn Draeger. I'm with IncredibleBank. I'm a business banker here, so I do business loans. Help people buy business, refinance businesses, things like that.
So JoAnn, I know you do a lot more than just hang out at IncredibleBank, although that's a big job. I know you're very involved in the community. Why don't you share a few of those things?
Sure. So I'm on the board for the chamber, and I've been on the board I think for 3 years. I'm a chamber ambassador that I've been for over 20 years, almost as long as Liz Tillish. I'm on the Wausau Early Bird Rotary Club. In there, I do membership director for them, and the Fromm Brothers Historical Society board. There's a couple other boards that I'm involved in. So really a lot of community involvement, and I can't be more happy that my employer supports all of my different community events that I'm at and involved in.
So I know I see you at a lot of those events, and I know your employer supports you, but why do you choose to do those things?
Anytime I can help somebody change a life, do something for somebody else, I feel good at night. Every night before I go to bed, honestly, I say, okay, whose life did I make a difference in today? And if it's not even a life-changing, if I just made somebody's day and they text me, hey, you just made my day, thank you for whatever it might be, that is what helps me sleep at night. And when I can wake up in the morning and say, okay, who's it gonna be today? I just love helping different people, and however that can be, whatever I can do to make their day, so.
That's great. We need more people with your energy for sure.
Thank you.
Can you share an example of a time you advocated fiercely on behalf of someone, a person, a cause, one of the things you were talking about earlier?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've been involved in for the last 11 years is the Never Forgotten Honor Flight. And they formed right after I met this group of individuals that formed our hub in our area. And they were telling me their story, and they used their own funds to fly that first group of veterans to Washington, D.C. to see their memorial, which was $70,000. They're like, we took money out of our savings, our home equity, our this, our that. I'm like, how unselfish of you to do that, to make that happen for these people. So I'm like, there has to be something I can do to help. And they're like, there is. So they came to the bank, had a meeting with our CEO and my boss at the time, and they told their story and said what they wanted to do with that they wanted to keep flying these veterans for a year if possible. So $70,000 times 4 a year. And they're like, so what do you guys want to do? And I'm like, well, tell us how we can help. And they're like, well, fundraise for money. And I'm like, great, how much money? And what do you need? What do you think would be a good idea? And they're like, well, that's what we are looking for you to do. And how about sponsor an entire flight? And I'm like, oh, yes, we're in. And they walked out, and my boss and the CEO looked at me, and they're like, how are you gonna make that happen? And I'm like, oh, with your help, and I'm not sure, but we're gonna do it. So I had Christmas tree raffles and snowmobile rides and motorcycle rides, and I get $1,000 here and $1,000 there. I'm like, how am I gonna do this? Because it was a lot. I was stressed out. So finally I'm like, okay, Indian Head came to me and said, let's have a golf outing. And I'm like, perfect. So I think we made over $40,000 on that. But anyway, we ended up making our goal and going on that flight, and life-changing. To see these veterans, men, women, everybody, to be appreciated and cry and tell the story that they've never told anybody before was amazing. And I've been doing that golf outing for the last 11 years. And we have, in that time, raised over $300,000, which is 600 veterans that have been able to go. And with that, I've been able to go 5 times. So 5 times, and you get to be, you have such a bond with the veteran that you're a guardian with. And my dad was one of them, so that was amazing. I got to hear stories that I've never heard about my dad and how he hitchhiked home from California after his time served, and he had $1,000 in his shoe. And I'm like, oh, anyway, and now we wouldn't even consider that. But at the time, but one of the stories was, on our way back, they do a thing called mail call. And my veteran gets his mail and he's reading it and he's showing me pictures of his grandkids and the different cards that he got, and he gets to one envelope and he puts it down and he looks out the window and I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, yep. And I go, can I read that for you or do you want help? I wasn't sure what happened. Anyway, so I opened it and read it for him, and it said, Dad, I'm so proud of you, and I really hope that this trip is everything you wanted it to be, and I'm sorry that we haven't been on speaking terms the last 10 years, and I want you to know that I love you and I miss you. And we were both crying, and he told me the story, and we got back to the airport to the welcome party in Mosinee, and we're walking through the line with him and his wife and myself, and there's his family, and this daughter is standing there, and he's like, that's the daughter, and I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, they're like, will you come out to eat with us? And I'm like, it's 11 o'clock at night, I'm exhausted, but anyway, there's still, the whole family is friends of mine now on Facebook, and we're all very close, but.
What an amazing event. I watch those little return parties, and I don't know if it's just the emotions of it or the music and all the pieces of it, it makes you teary-eyed every time I see it. So thanks for your work on that. That's amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So you know, I think you just mentioned one, but other ways you act courageously. I mean, I think to say you'll raise $70,000 with no idea how is, some people would say maybe questionable, some people would say courageous.
Right.
What are other ways you act courageously?
Sure. So another story was a while ago. I was at a bank and happy with my position. I was a manager in the executive management team, and nothing wrong with that position, but I got a call from a competitor and asking me to be a commercial lender. I'm like, well, that's where I want to be. That's my goal in my life. And so I came back and asked my boss, I'm like, what is my career path? And he said, you know, why would we move you? You're great where you are, and there's no career path, that's it. And I'm like, oh, well, I really wanted to do this, and do you think like maybe a year, 5 years? No. And I'm like, okay, well, unfortunately, I have a position that's been offered to me, and it's this, and that's really what I want. And I gave him my resignation letter, and he crumpled it up, threw it on the floor, and he said, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. He goes, now go home, think about this for 3 days, and then come back and let's get back to work. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go home and I'm like, maybe it is a stupid thing. Maybe I can't do it. Maybe I don't even know. But the people that were trying to hire me said, you're gonna be amazing. And we know your downfalls, we know your strengths. So get your butt in here. So I went back and said, you know what, I'm quitting, I'm going over there. And he's like, you'll be back, and that's the dumbest thing you've ever done. And I left, and I'm like, I'm sorry you feel that way. So I start my new job, and I have to go to training in Medford, Wisconsin, and I get there, meeting with all the people that are gonna be my support staff, and I had this one meeting with a person, and they said, you know, so you'll be required to come to all these meetings, these lender meetings, that you'll present your loan requests. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. I go, how many people are there? And how many people are commercial lenders, like what I'm gonna be? And she said about 15. And I go, okay, so with the 15, like what are their names? Maybe I know some of them. And she's like, Larry, Chris, Jim, Jack, Tim. And I'm like, you know, she went on. And I'm like, those sound like all male names. And she goes, that's because they are. And she goes, they are. And we're a 105-year-old bank, and you're the first commercial lender that we've ever had, female commercial lender. And I'm like, go me. And I'm like, that's pretty exciting. And she goes, I'm like, high five to girl power. And she goes, let's just say good luck. Anyway, so I walked out of there, I walked out of the bank, bawling, got home. I'm like, Dennis, my husband, I'm going back to my old bank. I'm comfortable, I know my job, this is not the right fit for me. And he's like, who are you and what'd you do with my wife? He's like, pull up your bootstraps and you've got this. And show her who you are and everybody else. And anyway, so I ended up being one of their top lenders, and I stuck it out. So that was courageous, in my opinion. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail, and those things, your mind starts playing games, but.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's always about women should be supporting other women, but sometimes they don't.
Mhm.
But you just talked about, you taking a courageous jump. What's something you've done to help others take that courageous jump, other women?
Mhm.
Can you share any examples of that time where you've helped promote somebody or given somebody that extra little push
Sure.
to get them thinking in a new direction?
So, as a banker, we a lot of times end up being more than a banker. We end up being a counselor and helping people work through certain challenges that they might be going through in their lives. And not long ago, I had a lady, she was 81 years old, and her husband of over 60 years passed away. In that era, all they did was cook, and not all, my God, cook, clean, do the laundry, and that was it. So she struggled with, I don't know how to drive. I don't have, I did everything with my husband for over 60 years, so I have friends, but I don't see them, only when we go to weddings or we do whatever. So she goes, we have 5 rental properties. I don't know the first thing about them. I don't know if we have leases. I don't know how they pay. I don't know how I do maintenance. I don't know all of these different things. I don't know how to use a cell phone. I don't drive. He did all the driving. I don't know how to put gas in a vehicle. So I'm like, I can't imagine how she feels. But I need to help her to accomplish all these things. And now she's 80, that was over 2 years ago, and she's 83. She's so busy, she can't wait to tell me who she had coffee, where they went for coffee, lunch, supper, and she's doing her own baking, putting her own gas in her vehicle, and she couldn't be more happy about that. She's gotten rid of all of the rentals but one, and she doesn't want to sell that one yet for various reasons, but to see her now and have so much energy and life and be so excited that from where she was 2 years ago, that to me was a huge accomplishment.
I love that story. I think it's always about, you don't always have to do something big and fancy. It can be your neighbor, it can be a friend, it can be a family member, and it's always about empowering others. So, that was a true example of how you served somebody. Can you share any other examples of how you serve those in our community?
Absolutely. So, in a community, when I do things, when I join boards, when I serve on committees, I don't want to just serve to add it to my resume. I want to serve and make a difference. So, a couple of examples. One is, I had my first year last winter where I helped at the warming shelter. And I'm sitting there from 6 until 9 every Monday. And I get there and there's this community and they have so much, they're close-knit too. And this girl came in and she's like, my feet are so cold, these steel-toed boots I'm so cold. And I had to ride my bike for an hour. And this other person is like, you got a job? You got a job? And she's like, I did. I don't want to be here anymore, and I'm going to make a difference. And she's so sad, and they're all like, oh my gosh, you got a job. And so I'm just sitting there, I'm like, The next day I go to lunch with my husband, and he's like, we have our own business, and he goes, I can't get employees, I can't keep employees, and he's going on complaining about staff. And I'm like, Dennis, I want you to hire somebody from the warming shelter. And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, let me see if we can even do this. So I talked to the director and she's like, yep, he can come in. She goes, they don't have cell phones. They don't know what time of the day it is. They don't have the means to get to his business. So I'm not sure what you're thinking. And I'm like, next Monday, I'm here. Let's set up the interviews and he can come Tuesday morning. So that's what we did. And he hired one of them. And that person is one of his best employees. Amazing. I love that story. So that's one of the things. The other thing is I deliver meals at Christmas time with K-Tech Charities. They do the Christmas meals, and I make my kids do it since they've been young because they need to see that they are very fortunate. So one time we're delivering the meals, and door, and my son is like, Merry Christmas, and this lady is like, who are you, and why are you doing this? And he goes, well, you know, we're the Draeger family, and we just found out that somebody you know thought you could use a little help this Christmas, and so here's a bunch of food for you. And she's like, no, you don't understand. I have kids, and we haven't eaten for a day, and I don't know how to pray to God, and I don't know how to pray. And she's like, I'm trying to teach myself right now, sitting on the couch, because I see my kids who are starving, and they need help. We need help, and you knocked on the door. And she goes, you're angels of God. And I'm like, I've never been called an angel of God, but I'll take it. But anyway, it was just such an amazing experience. We went out and bought a bunch of toys and things like that, and our kids were just on the floor with just diapers. I'm like, oh. Anyway, so two of the things, my thing is when I go to bed at night, if I know that I've changed a life, that's my goal. That's amazing, but if I've at least made a difference in somebody's life, I sleep so much better.
Well, I think everybody listening out here today is wondering when you do sleep, with all the things you're involved in, and I think it's just such a great example of how people in our community give back. I really want to say on behalf of our community, thank you for all you do on behalf of so many people. So is there anything else you'd like to share? I think the challenge is if everybody out there could do one thing, right?
Every day to make somebody's day.
So with that, thanks and congratulations and
Thank
good
you.
luck.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Kris and JoAnn, that was fantastic. Thank you. Just for anybody that's out there watching right now, I'll remind you that at 10 a.m. we'll be interviewing our next finalist. That's Vicki Resich. And we've got 5 interviews coming up on both Thursday and Friday of this week. So continue watching for these live pieces, and thanks for watching this one.